Welcome to this next session of the Cloud Exchange. My guests today are Richard Brake-Iron, the Senior Director for Strategic Initiatives for America's Public Sector at Commvault, Sean Pupanich, a Principal Solutions Architect for Amazon Web Services, and Ryan Lake, the Chief Technology Officer at Kellen Technologies. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Thanks, Jason.
For having us.
As we've been hearing all day, we've been talking about why agencies are moving to the cloud, how they're moving to the cloud, why the cloud matters. And it's very easy. It's an easy question to answer, but there's a lot of complexity there. And I think what we've seen over the last 6-7 years is this move away from cloud first, this really acceptance of cloud smart. But despite that, I think agencies still struggle. So Sean, let me ask you from AWS's perspective, what are some of those challenges that agencies still find as they move to this concept of cloud smart?
Surprisingly, some of the same challenges they used to have, we still see. So every time we get a new customer that comes to cloud, they're going through that same experience and cycle again for the first time. So oftentimes it has to do with an initiative that they're starting, almost more like a cloud-first initiative. And the teams aren't necessarily trained or prepared or thinking about cloud in a different way that they think about on-prem. So very often they'll try to do the same exact thing that they're doing today, replicate that in cloud, and they won't see all the benefits that you normally get from actually modernizing in cloud.
One of the things we hear a lot about is the lift and shift. You can't just lift and shift. Are we seeing too much lift and shift still? Or yes, they're moving away from lift and shift, but they're not necessarily thinking about transformation, modernization.
Yeah, so lift and shift is a great strategy as a means to get into a more agile environment where you can modernize. Unfortunately, what we do see sometimes is they do the lift and shift and then they forget to do the rest of it. And so they don't necessarily see the results that they were originally hoping for. So an important part of getting the benefits out of cloud is actually going through that additional analysis and modernization steps. Because we're taking away, you having to manage all the infrastructure, you have that extra time to focus on these new concepts. And unfortunately, that doesn't always happen.
So,
Richard,
I think last time I gave the analogy of you give the farmer out there in the field being pulled by the mule and going behind the plow. You sell him the John Deere tractor, and the next thing you know, you go out the next day to see how it's going, and sure enough, the farmer's sitting up on the John Deere, happy as could be, drinking his iced tea, and yet you see the mule pulling the John Deere tractor. And I think this is the issue of lift and shift, and I think it comes back to this people, process, and technology. I hate to use such a sort of a mediocre example that may not apply directly to IT, but it applies to cloud. It applies to how do you introduce new technology, and how do you learn from what AWS has, and how do you build a team of people that can build the trust in, hey, it's okay maybe not to know coming out of the gate with this new shiny object on how it's all going to work together. But you know what? There are people out there who have gone through the hard knocks a little bit. Like you say, this is not a new cloud is not new yesterday. This has been a journey for many people. And the key is, how do I get the right people? I think that consistently is where government struggles. They have people that know the on-prem, they don't understand totally cloud, and they're trying to learn that, and they're trying to learn it with the right team. And I think that's been a core theme.
Ryan, let me have you jump into the discussion a little bit as well, because one of the challenges when you talk about this core team, as Richard brought it up, and the right people, is it a matter of like skill sets? Is it a matter of not understanding, oh, well, on-prem we did it this way, so in cloud we'll just do it the same way? What's when you talk to government experts and government leaders, where's the disconnect happening from your perspective?
A lot of it is that the skill sets that exist on-prem, certain pieces of that are directly transferable to cloud, and a lot aren't. And a lot of these people are very smart people, but they're being suddenly thrown into new environments. And having, what we do is we kind of come in that consultatory white glove concierge role, and we provide that backing assistance beyond what the vendor does to allow those very smart people to have someone to talk to say, hey, I've got this problem, I need to solve it. And we've, through all the customers that we work with, have developed a lot of skills around solving those problems, and we've probably seen it before. And that's really that breadth of experience that a partner can gain beyond what the OEM has, because Amazon knows Amazon's technology stack intimately, and Commvault knows their product intimately. But we work with customers across a wide breadth of their scenarios to implement those technologies within their environments.
And if I could just amplify, you know what's so neat is to have people that are willing to help get the full breadth out of AWS and out of Commvault. And you need an MSP that can do that. And what I mean by that is, how many of us sit down at our Word terminal or our Word or Office and we use 10% of its capability? Well, that's not very effective. That's not very efficient. And you're not gaining all that resiliency from cloud, but you bring in an MSP who knows AWS, who knows Commvault, and we all respect each other's capabilities, and then they can really talk to that person. Don't you think, Sean?
Yeah, have you ever met someone that played chess for the first time and was an expert?
Yeah, it takes a lot. I mean, we've learned a lot in the time that we've been doing this. The cloud journey is one of constant learning. You will never, no class, no certification really gets the experience of sitting down and doing it and watch what doesn't work. And we do.
And it evolves. So one thing that's great about partners is they get experience across a number of customers, multiple projects. So they're doing this in volume, whereas an individual customer, they won't have as many projects, so they won't have all that past experience to lean on.
It sounds to me like the way you're describing where agencies maybe have struggled in the past is they're putting all their eggs in one basket, meaning, well, we'll just, no offense to Sean, hire AWS and let them take care of it, but not understanding that there's all these moving pieces that play into it. And if you're not understanding how those pieces fit together, your puzzle may come together perfectly and it may come together missing the corners or whatever have you.
So if you look at the history of like IT projects that have gone over budget or over time or gone wrong, cloud is not fundamentally different in that way. It still takes planning, it still takes understanding, it still takes experience.
And I like your puzzle analogy, Jason. I do a variant. It's funny how we know when we do a puzzle to put the corners in first, and you do the edge. I do, maybe not everybody, but starting from the middle may not be good. If you don't know cloud and you don't know the framework, you might end up starting from the middle, and yet you could have been so much better had you built it in a construct where if you had known that. If you get the right team together and you don't have to go it alone, it's amazing. You get to the resiliency of cloud. You get to the breadth of what cloud really can bring in making you more efficient.
Sean brought up this idea of lift and shift maybe is the first step, but there's so many other steps you can take, and that talks about the velocity, this idea of how can we get more to the cloud. I had a conversation just recently with a CIO, and they had about 80-85% of all applications in the cloud, but they're still looking to get more, and some may never get there. Not every CIO is in that position. For those who aren't and need to kind of increase their velocity, recommendations or ideas you have that could actually help them?
I think Ryan's a great person to talk to this because he sees firsthand, I think, some of where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, and so what we see a lot is there's certain classes of applications that can be cloudified very easily, and they may not be the first ones to move, but once they get there, they adopt the cloud mindset, they take on best practices, and they become very natural guests of that cloud. Then you have the rest. And the rest is you're either going to keep it on-prem or you're going to move it to the cloud, and you're going to move it to the cloud in lift and shift because that application is just, you're not going to be able to refactor it. You don't own it, you didn't make it, and you're not in a place to replace it. And we've had a lot of success working with customers about coming up with models of you're not going to be able to change this part, but we can build these services around it to help you make it as resilient as possible, to help you keep your data protected, and to help you keep that application as cloudified as it's going to get, because you're not going to be able to redo it.
And now with the advent of containers, some of the Kubernetes, hey, here's another methodology that an MSP, again, can sort of walk through and work off the technology that AWS, that Commvault, we embrace the new technology of containers because we know it is a way to create velocity in achieving capabilities rapidly without having to cloudify so much.
Yeah, and I think capabilities is the key word. Like the cloud is a capability platform. Like when you are in the cloud and you're happy there, you can do things at a velocity you were never able to do before. And that's key. And when those legacy applications are actually finally slated to be replaced, you will be able to find their replacement and bring it online faster than you ever could have before.
I mean, that's really where cloud has no competition, is really just when you're talking about rate of change, right? So especially when you're trying to modernize, especially when you're trying to build new things, that's where that environment really just gives you so many more tools than you would ever have available to yourself.
And they give it to you, in my mind, sort of free. And what I mean by that is...
Is it really free? Come on,
so here's the aspect that I want to talk about that. I could never hire all the engineers that AWS has. I could never keep up with their DevSecOps world. But you know what? when they implement a new capability and a feature set, it often goes, it's just automatic. They are bringing the best of the world as quickly as can. Commvault invests 27 years of trying to make it better all the time, and that feature set gets deployed. And then the MSP, what I love about this model is the MSP can come along and say, did you know AWS just released a new feature that you could leverage and we could stop this, this, and this. Is that sort of right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Go click this button and things are going to get 10% faster. Or let's look at how you're doing this. Like and we do see such a wide breadth of customers, from federal to commercial to everybody in between. And everybody thinks their kind of way of doing IT is the same, but it's really not. Every environment is unique, but there are always parallels between those environments where you can maximize efficiencies.
It's the benefit of the economies of scale. When you have thousands of customers on a same platform, then you can continue to upgrade that even if they're not asking for it.
I want to go back to something Ryan said just a few minutes ago about certain classes of apps are cloudified quickly. Define that a little bit, because if I'm sitting back at an agency going, well, I have all these old apps, this is 5 years old, 7 years old, 10 years old, or I have a mainframe, we know certain ones maybe can't be, but certain ones could be, and then when we can get to APIs, and that can really also solve it. But what do you mean certain classes?
I mean, the biggest class is if your organization owns that application, you can cloudify it. You have the talent, you have the code, you have the ability to cloudify it and do it. You will leverage all the advantages of going to the cloud when you do that. But there are a lot of organizations that have COTS software and maybe it's not even supported, or if it is supported, that vendor is just not interested in making those kind of changes. And unless you're ready to move off that technology, which may be on your roadmap, but you're not gonna pull that in as a precursor to your cloud journey, or you would never get there. So you're forced to kind of live with what you have. But there are a lot of tools that can make that easier.
And I can talk specifically from when we did the BRAC move now. Not a cloud journey, but a journey from one location to another. And all of a sudden, you have these applications that are hardwired protocols, and you're going like, yeah, you can't move that out of Fort Monmouth down to Aberdeen. We're not letting you do that. It is such a security risk, it's ridiculous. What people don't realize is new technology, new software exists. Every one of their non-easy moves, we found an alternative that was available, cheaper, faster, and all you had to do was invest a little bit of training for the people that were running it.
There's always a solution, and when you get to that solution, you have to kind of finish your first pass of a cloud migration so you can start the improvement phase. If you get stuck in the middle, then you kind of end up being in the worst of both worlds. So you have to, that forward progress is key.
Where I do see the customers most challenged is where their procurement model is difficult or not quite as compatible with this, constant change of cloud on-demand billing sort of approach.
And it's funny though, Sean, I mean, what AWS does with the marketplace allows a lot of flexibility in that procurement. I would agree with you, the model is, we procured this amount of money for this capability this year, and what do you mean it's going to go up and down every month, and at the end of the year we might have a balance to spend. That's even just as bad as having not enough. So
probably not as bad as not having not enough. But I get your point.
In the government, turning money back in is sort of like one of those, oh no.
You violated the Anti-Deficiency Act, made it worse. I'm no lawyer. I'm no lawyer, but
we agree.
but your point is fair. Sean, I just want to go also talk about that, because I think the procurement side, the iterative development, what I hear a lot from CIOs is agencies are starting to get their head around, well, we're not going to do the big bang. I can point to two agencies, DHS is one, and I just had a call with VA just recently, and they also did the same thing, where we're getting out of the big bang world. We've been hearing this for years, of course, but I think because of the cloud, because of this acceptance of DevSecOps, because of low-code, no-code type platforms, they're able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Are you having more customers coming to AWS saying, we want to do this iterative development, we want to change the way we are approaching this modernization?
So I think if you talk to the builders, they're always telling you that. But it does take leaders that can really push for these kinds of things. So in fact, one of the leaders I was talking with was actually from the private sector previously, and so he was able to bring some of that influence into government, and he was willing to, kind of take some knocks on the head in trying to affect some major changes.
Yeah, I think the crawl, walk, runs, it's not new.
Right.
They've always tried to do it, and they embrace it operationally. So when you bring in the technology, they're starting to understand, oh, there is a comparable message here. I think in the crawl, walk, run with data, especially, we keep trying to remind everybody, data is your new lifeblood of your organization. Let's figure out how to manage it as a life cycle model.
Yeah, and start with wins.
Yeah, start with wins. Do the stuff that you know will work.
Low-hanging fruit.
Get the wins under your belt. It's experience.
Get confidence.
Hopefully, a lot of the low-hanging fruit's done. I mean, when you talk about low-hanging fruit, agencies have done email, they've done the collaboration tools. You hope they've done most of that already. You all are kind of looking at me cross-eyed, so maybe not.
They're at a new stage. I think you're right. They did the low-hanging fruit, but they always had on their roadmap, let's do a little bit more. And now they're getting to that stage, and they realize some of the low-hanging, the way they did it, wasn't the best way.
In the last minute here together, I just want to give each of you kind of the last word here, and maybe we'll start with Ryan this time since we started with Sean last time. What's the one recommendation, one pothole, one thing you'd offer to avoid or to think about as agencies, again, on this cloud journey for several years now, but now it seems like they have a little more acceleration, a little more effort to kind of really take advantage of cloud?
I think it's absolutely worth taking the time to learn the platform that you're moving to and move with intent.
Richard?
I think you're seeing it here. In my opinion, the most important thing is find a team of experts that can work together, that show that they can work together, because it will be a team effort, and that's the way to get there first.
All right, Sean, you get the last word.
I think a big difference in today's world is all the information is out there on YouTube and on the web. There's no paywall. You can learn a ton of stuff just from conference material that's out there, courses, all kinds of stuff.
And today at the Cloud Exchange.
Yeah.
Don't forget
Cloud
that.
Exchange.
Yes.
You always got to learn at the Cloud
That's
Exchange.
why we're here.
That's why we're exchanging. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time for this session of the Cloud Exchange, so let me thank my guests. Richard Breakiron is the Senior Director for Strategic Initiatives for America's Public Sector at Commvault. Sean Pupanich is the Principal Solutions Architect for Amazon Web Services, and Ryan Lake is the Chief Technology Officer for Kellen Technologies. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
I'm Jason Miller, and you were watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more from the Cloud Exchange.